Ah, yes, someday has finally arrived. We've been promising someday we'll have new intro music, and by golly, it took to episode 23, but we do. Big thanks to Detox for that awesome new mix and a new fresh sound here on VIBELAND Sports. Welcome inside the VIBELAND Sports studios. I'm Todd Miller. It's episode 23. I'm joined by Casady Fletcher and by Kelby Peterson. Guys, a lot to talk about this week in a very array of sports, so let's get right to the topics. First, Texas high school football, and people are going, whoa, why are you talking about that? Well, Art Briles, who has been shot down for several jobs since being let go from Baylor, has resurfaced, and he is now going to be the head football coach at Mount Vernon in Texas. I'll start the conversation by this. If you had a student at Mount Vernon High School, and he was a football player, would he play for Art Briles?
Not a chance, Todd. Not even a little bit.
Oh man, here comes the moral dilemma. Here, it's if I'm a dad coaching a football player, I say, son, you go listen to him, everything he has to say about football. But that's where the listening begins and ends. Because if you want to come home and learn a life lesson, you come home and learn it from me. But if you're learning life lessons from Art Briles, no thanks. A heck of a football coach, there's no doubt about that. But as a human being, no thank you.
I wouldn't let my son play for him either, and here's why. Art Briles has had multiple opportunities to admit, at least to say, I'm sorry publicly for what went on at Baylor. And every time that this guy has that, whether it's on ESPN or another national platform, he acts very uncomfortable about even talking about the subject and approaches nowhere near any sort of apology. Documented. It is very well documented that guy, exactly what was going on, that he bent rules to allow players who that type of conduct to continue to play. And he went so far as to tell trash of less than stellar caliber to go play at Baylor. So there is why I want my son play for Art Briles. Do I believe that Art Briles get a second chance? I do. I mean, this country is built on second chances, but it's toxic because he refuses to admit to anything that happened, and it is documented and very well documented his part in it. Be sincere, be remorseful, say I'm sorry. Take ownership for the problems, and then I think a lot of people morally would not overlook it, but I think they would be more sympathetic maybe to second chance.
Yeah, and I mean, he's the one that cultivated that culture there at Baylor that was an extremely toxic culture, and that was something that, he has to accept his responsibility in that role, that he has not shown any signs of remorse. And for that reason, I'm with you, Todd. I can't see him getting a job where now he's going to be molding the minds of high school students. I mean, he may be coaching freshmen out there,
right.
And I just don't think it's a good situation at all. And I think this is going to end up being a black eye on the program at Mount Vernon.
Absolutely. I mean, do you think we'd be talking about Mount Vernon, Texas high school football if they didn't just hire Art Briles? So it's they say no publicity is bad publicity, but I'd say this is bad publicity because, Todd, back to what you were saying, how Art Briles just has had this whole attitude about it is like, guys, why are we talking about this again? Well, Art, we're talking about it again because you never apologized to it. You never admitted it. There's overwhelming evidence. You were gone. You don't no longer have that job. It happened. And by the way, in this new report, if you guys read it, it came out and said that, oh, by the way, he did that same thing back when he was a high school coach before he was a coach at Baylor. A girl had come forward and said, hey, this happened. Later, that girl had to do a report for one of her classes, and she had to go interview Art Briles. She walks in, she introduces himself, and he says, oh, you're the girl that this whole fuss is about. Her dad then goes to Art Briles' house to say, hey, what's going on? Why did you let this happen? They interview Art about it now. He said, oh, I don't remember that. That doesn't ring my bell. But, hey, guys, guess what? As a football coach, how many times do you have an angry parent knocking on your door saying, hey, your player did this to my daughter? Maybe if you're Art Briles, so many of those have happened that one was hard to remember, but a normal human being would say, no, that never happens. I don't forget something like that. So again, you could say that he's probably a good football coach. Obviously, the results on the field are what they are, but how he got there not okay, and no reason this guy should be coaching and shaping the minds of high school students. Maybe go be a consultant on a staff. I want to hear your analytics and your offensive mind. I'll hear that all day, but do not tell me how to be a human being, and do not shape the minds of young people.
Yeah, and his contact should, like in that scenario, would be limited to coaches and adults, where he's not going to be in contact with those high school students if he was in a consultant role, like you're saying. And that I could accept something like that. I would, not like it necessarily, but that's more tolerable. What's going on here, though? What is Mount Vernon thinking? I mean, their superintendent, that interview that he gave,
they vetted
was a
him.
joke.
They vetted Art.
If people weren't outraged by this until yesterday, they would be outraged right now. Superintendent Jason McCullough was an embarrassment. That embarrassment to say that they only had limited scope in which they could do it. Of course, was Grant Taft, who coached for 20 years at Baylor. Taft's not real happy his name all of a sudden's gotten brought into this mess. Did you contact the NCAA? No. Did you contact any victims? No.
So did you do any vetting? Hell no.
They vetted exactly what to get the answer to justify the means. And what it all, guys, is this, that we live in a society that it's win at all costs. It doesn't matter about cheating. It doesn't the way parents and coaches treat young people. It doesn't morals when it comes sometimes to hosting or to hiring a proven track record of success. That's just the way it is. And that is what, to me, this move is all about, is win at all costs. We have a chance to get one of the best high school coaches in the state of Texas, and we're going to do it regardless of the outcome. I'm going to make a prediction of this show right now. I think because of the lousy answer that Jason McCullough gave earlier this week, I'm not so certain Art Briles even gets to the sideline on a Friday night. There could be such an outcry from the public around that school district and the lousy excuse for hiring this man by the superintendent of schools that they end up having to rethink the decision.
And correct me if I'm wrong, would this not be the second time that would have happened to Art Briles? He's already got a job once, and the outcry was so extreme that they rescinded the offer. I don't remember the terminology that they used, but they rescinded the offer to Art because there was such bad kickback. And like you were saying, Todd, I promise you the vetting process was that superintendent looking around the room at his high school coaches and saying, hey, has it been long enough since Art Briles has been in the news? Have we not heard his name? I think it's been long enough. Let's go ahead and hire him. That was the vetting process, I promise you.
And
exactly.
Not one single person in the 7-person school board voted against the hiring of Art Briles. It was a 7-0 vote, unanimous, to bring coach high school football. What an
shameful.
And you know what? This came out last Friday. On Tuesday of this week, he gets around to finally addressing media questions. If you're going to let this within the hour to start answering questions, it's almost like he had to formulate some type of excuse or justification for the reason to bring this guy in. I mean, you're right.
There's going to be some repercussions through that community and through all of high school athletics, I think, because of this. And maybe that helps raise the standard around the nation, and it gets this conversation. I'm trying to find any bright spot that we can for this story. But, I mean, my goodness, Art Briles coaching high school kids again, I never thought I'd see it, and I'm kind of upset that he's going to get to continue to do what he loves to do.
Well, Texas high school football, but why should we be surprised again with the way the world works in amateur, quote-unquote, athletics? I don't know if you guys had a chance earlier this week. The Oklahoman had an article about Andre Roberson, who says he's ready finally to get back to playing for the Thunder after 20 months coming back from that injury. It's a very serious injury, but to me, it's career-threatening for Andre because of this. Players, very serious injury. Sean Livingston had a very serious injury. But they have marketable basketball skills. That you're going to Andre does not of his agility. You're not going to convince me that he doesn't lose mobility and quickness Even if it drops off just a little bit, guys, he's not a great. We all know without debating the issue that he. So if he loses any of those skills very much, there's a chance, KP, he may not be with the Thunder much longer.
Not even that, but I mean, the fact that he might not be with the Thunder, I'm curious to watch his minutes next year. Is he a starter? Do you bring him off the bench? I don't really think you can, because he doesn't bring an offensive spark off the bench, and that's what the Thunder's issue was this year, was bad shooting. Well, what are we doing when Andre gets healthy? Shooting, if it all possible, might get worse percentage-wise when he comes back into the fold. So like you said, Todd, all these injuries and these things that are going to affect him aren't positives at all. It's every tangible skill that Andre Roberson has been negatively affected. He's a great defender. Well, he's going to lose mobility. He's going to lose quickness. Casady was talking earlier, if you want to compliment anything about his offensive game, and that it's that he's there on the fast break in terms of speed, quickness, and an option. I mean, Andre dunking the ball, I like that shot when it happens, but if he's not is losing quickness and speed, then he's not there. So I heard Barry Trammell say this earlier on the radio show that he does every afternoon, and it blew me away and it got me thinking, but I think he might be right. He said he would be shocked. He used the word shocked if Andre averages 10 minutes or more this season. And going from a starter to a guy, the guy that starts the game, a guy that finishes the game. A year ago, thinking that is just unthinkable for Andre Roberson to average maybe 10 minutes a game. With the emergence of Terrence Ferguson, it's going to be really hard for Andre to find minutes this year. I think with, the Thunder's biggest weakness this last year was terrible shooting, and adding Andre Roberson into the fold isn't going to help that. So I'm curious to see where he ends up minutes-wise this season. I don't know if this injury is going to help or hurt his career, but I'm going to lean towards hurt, because he doesn't have much of an offensive game. And like I was saying earlier, this injury is affecting every positive aspect of his game, and that's quickness, mobility, and strong defensive presence. And if you're not as quick as you once were, you're going to lose some defensive prowess. So we'll see where he ends up.
Casady, do you believe that this is the beginning of the end for Andre?
I do. He already has limited value. He's a one-way player for the most part. He's going to bring a lot of value on the defensive end. Look, we all know what he's able to do when he's at full strength, and when he's really on. He's probably one of the best on-ball defenders in the entire NBA, if not the very best. Just a couple years ago, when he had that awful injury, I think he was on his way to a Defensive Player of the Year award. But sitting out for that long, and the fact that we kept hearing all season, like, oh, well, we thought Andre's going to get back. He tried to go back, and he had to kind of restart his process. Now, look, the rehab process takes time, and especially for an injury like this, it takes an extended period of time to get back to where you're in game shape and can go out there and not embarrass yourself. But it's not like Andre had a great shot that he can fall back on the offensive end, like you guys are saying. I don't know what value he brings to any team moving forward. And so I think whenever his deal with the Thunder is up, that's probably going to be the end for Andre if he's not able to develop his offensive game to be at least a serviceable backup for somebody in the league.
This is my thought. I think Andre starts the season coming off the bench just to bring him along to nurse that injury and recovery as much as they can. But here's the problem. If it becomes quickly evident that he cannot play extended minutes, there is where you may see the 10 to 12 to 15 minutes a game, a vast reduction in from what he was playing prior to the injury.
I just don't like him coming off the bench, because with the Thunder, I think
but I think they're going to do that.
You're right. They need to
give an injury.
Exactly. They need to get him back in the swing of things. I'm with you, Todd. I don't think you throw him out as a day one starter to say, all right, here you go, man. You missed a whole season. Get right back into it. I'm with you. You ease him into, but for his permanent role with the Thunder, coming off the bench is not a good thing for him, because we need offensive power coming off the bench. We need an offensive spark, and bringing Andre off the bench to go guard the other team's sixth man is kind of, in my opinion, pointless. Put him on the floor. He's got to guard the other team's best player, so PG can get a little rest on the defensive side.
Yeah, that's exactly his value. More than anything is he gives Paul George just a little bit of a break so that he can go do what he needs to on the offensive end. Andre helps pick up that load on defense. And Look, we all were talking about it. The Thunder players were talking about it, about how good that defense they thought really could be when they got Andre back, and with Steven Adams backing it up, and with Russ being as aggressive as he was, throw Andre in that mix, and that's a potent defense right there.
Let's put our Thunder boxer shorts and our Thunder hats on real quick and get excited about this, because if we're being honest with ourselves, we didn't really get to see the full potential of the Thunder. I mean, Paul George and Andre played great next to each other last year, but I want to see Jeremy Grant, Paul George, Andre Roberson, Steven Adams, and Russell on the floor all together at once. Jeremy Grant took a huge leap last season. And on the defensive end, too. He was a big-time shot blocker this year. So I'm with you, Casady. I think that lineup, man, again, wearing my Thunder hat, my Thunder boxer shorts, that could be an insane defensive lineup that could compete with anybody. But as we all know, if the ball's got to go in the basket on the offensive side, you can play great defense all day, but if the ball's not going in the hoop, you can defend your tail off. But if you can't score, you're not going to keep up with anybody.
And that's exactly right. And again, with the minutes restrictions he's going to have, it makes the most sense for him coming off the bench, but I don't think there's a place for him on the bench in this Thunder team. So that's the Andre Roberson conundrum, I guess.
As it's built right now. Same press to get to work.
KP, I'm going to branch out on something you said. You're going to like this. In my Thunder boxers. How about that? I'm just going to sit here in my Thunder hat.
Okay.
You mentioned Steven Adams. If Steven Adams is back next year, get ready for exit. Because this team has got to make changes. We've talked about it on this podcast, and he is one of the very few pieces that brings you something back equally in return.
Agreed.
So, again, if some of those guys you're talking about are still on the roster, this Thunder team's got problems. And I don't know about you, but I've been very spoiled, and I'll raise my hand and be the first one. Tell you what, if they go back in October with this basic end of the season with, there's going to be a lot of discontent in Oklahoma City, because people got very, very restless the way the regular season ended and the playoffs ended, going out again so quickly in the first round.
Agreed. Absolutely. You're right. I mean, in a perfect world, I'd like to see that lineup just to go do it again, but we did it again, and we've been using the same formula, and it's not working. So I need to take off my Thunder boxers and put on my logical boxers and tell myself that, hey, that hasn't worked in the past, and it's not
without my
work
Thunder
now.
boxers. By the
I
way?
was about to say, ignoring the visual image that Todd just created. let's go.
We hope
on.
nobody swerved off the side of the road.
I didn't hear the first 10 seconds of your conversation because I was trying to not picture you.
TV, you're a liar. I saw your eyes sparkling. Or is that the sun coming in through the screen? Guys, about the Thunder, initially had on the list two assistants.
Yes.
Billy Donovan, and they're in with the franchise for a long, long time. They're going to playoff. One is going to join Monty Williams
In Phoenix.
The other is going to Sacramento. Is that a concern that you're losing two long-term coaches to franchises that are not playoff teams?
I think that's the writing on the wall.
Agreed.
And I think we're about to see the whole front office just get cleared out. Anybody that's involved in it, I don't think Billy Donovan, that guy is probably on a very short leash right now. I'm going to be, at this point, not shocked if he comes back, because there just hasn't really been a whole lot of rumors building up about potential coaches that the Thunder are talking to. But Sam Presti also works in the shadows, and so we may not know until the day of it happens. We may have the Billy Donovan firing press conference the day before they're hiring the new head coach.
I throw out a name for you,
Okay.
KP. I want to see what you think about this. Kendrick Perkins.
Ooh.
Kendrick Perkins.
Not.
Because think about this.
Yeah.
Think about how respected that guy is in the locker room with Oklahoma City. And if there's any one person that Russ, but he might listen to, be his former teammate.
Perk. Oh yeah. The problems that this team is having, and the not caring, the lack of aggression, you put Perk back in that practice facility. That's day one has changed. I believe Kendrick Perkins once referred to himself as the silverback of the locker room. I believe he called himself that. So bring me back Big Perk in that locker room all day. Just you don't even just say anything. Just put him in the corner and let him scowl and stare at Russell. And I think without words, Kendrick Perkins can change this team.
That's his mentality, is once you get the opponent down, just put them away for good. And that's kind of what the Golden State Warriors have figured out how to do. And I think Perk can bring that mentality to the Thunder locker room.
But as soon as those guys leave, Presti, Donovan, both, somebody needs to be on the phone to Kendrick Perkins, who, by the way, is not hard to find anymore.
Oh, he's
on a national media tour, and say, look, we need you. He really checks every box. About would go under in the locker room. The fact that Russ may not change, but probably would at least listen to him. Also, that staff. He checks the box with the fans. I think Oklahoma City's fans would be very, very excited if Kendrick Perkins came back and was an assistant coach.
It's a home run.
Because then, like I said, he's not afraid to call people out either. I'm scrolling through his Twitter right now because he's a great follow on Twitter, and he straight up said it in the Toronto series. He's like, "What is Serge Ibaka doing out there?" He's like, "That's not the dude that I practiced with. That's not the defense that I taught him." And then later on in the series, Serge turned it up, and Kendrick says, "Serge, I see you. That's the wild African I know. God damn it!" So that is Kendrick Perkins to a T. He calls him out a few games before, and then he sees Serge going wild out there because that's my dude. That is the guy I know that I practiced with, that I trained and taught how to play defense. So I love his pride. And yeah, I think he would be a great asset. Just maybe not even an official coach's role, just an advisor. Like I said, just put him in the corner, let him make angry faces and scare everybody, and put some respect back in this Oklahoma City Thunder name.
I say let him be a coach. Let him coach the bigs. I mean, whatever it
takes is what I'm saying.
Whatever he needs to be, if he needs to be, the number one assistant or whatever, fine with me. I mean, the guy doesn't have coaching experience, but he's got a basketball mind, obviously, and he has the respect. Again, you go down the list, every box that you could possibly need to be checked with Kendrick Perkins is there, and I say it'd be a great move, Todd.
He does not bring coaching experience, but what he brings probably would be more valuable to the Thunder than an X&O standpoint.
Especially right now.
Exactly, and the respect that he'll command. You're right. Not a lot of coaching experience, but he walks in the room, I promise you, every player on that team has the utmost respect for him.
All right, more topic here in segment number the National Hockey League playoffs. Great story. The St. Louis Blues, who just a couple of months ago had the worst record in the National Hockey League now, are 4 wins away from winning the franchise's first ever Stanley Cup. They fell 5-3 to the Boston Bruins in Game 1 in Boston earlier this week. But just what a great turnaround story the Blues have been, and what a wide open playoffs this year has been in the National Hockey League, with both number 1 seeds going out in the first round.
That's why I wish we talked about hockey more. I wish hockey was a bigger presence in the United States. I wish it was a bigger presence in Oklahoma City. I love to talk about it. It is one of my favorite sporting events to go to. I was talking to this with my wife the other day, and we were talking about what is your favorite sporting event to go to live, and she said hockey, and it kind of blew my mind. And I was like, really? We don't get to see that a lot. She's like, well, it's fast-paced, action-packed, and they let the dudes fight each other. She's like, what's better than that, watching these guys? I mean, I tell the story all the time. Like in hockey, you go punch the dude in the face, they go, all right, sir, you go sit down for 5 minutes, think about what you've done, and you come back out here and play again. In the NBA, you punch somebody, you're suspended for 5 games at the very least, not 5 minutes. That's why I love it. But again, Todd, just like you said, the Blues, they were in last place a few months ago. Now they're fighting to be the best team in the league. The 2 8 seeds beat the 1 seed. So it's not what you can ever predict. This would be like the Warriors going out in the first round to I already forgot who the 8 seed was in the NBA this year. But it'd be like them, the Clippers. You're right. So every year in basketball, the 1 and 8 seed, it's is it going to go? Are they going to make it to 5? Like it's a joke almost. And in the NHL, it's a real competition where the 8 seed has just as good as a chance as the 1 seed does. And I love to watch it. And I want to talk about a little bit too about the Bruins before we get into this. They're a great hockey team, a great franchise, and Casady can. Be a part of this. These poor Boston fans. It's
about this.
God, they haven't had a championship
the Tiger
parade.
Slam back in 2000.
Yeah,
We're almost the Boston Slam.
I'm telling you.
Poor Boston. They haven't had. What are they doing? They haven't had a championship parade in like 4 months. Those poor guys.
Wins the Stanley Cup final. They will hold the Stanley Cup, the World Series trophy, and the Vince Lombardi trophy, all in the same season.
Yeah,
that's
man.
impressive.
Lowly, train wreck Boston Celtics would not have the Larry O'Brien Trophy.
Wow.
Yeah, this poor city. It's like, I mean, at this point, if you're a Boston fan or you even taking off work for the parade, you're like, I'll just catch the next one.
Right. Yeah, the last two were pretty cool.
Yeah, they're all right. I don't need to go to this one.
No, the Stanley Cup playoffs are some of the best entertainment just on television.
And if you haven't watched hockey all season, go ahead and jump on the bandwagon and watch
Please,
it right
come
now.
on
I
the
don't know if
bandwagon.
there's a better sporting event to watch, especially if you haven't watched all season long, to follow along. There's not a better sport to jump on. And I promise you, it's going to be more entertaining than these NBA finals coming up.
Better believe it.
Usually watch hockey. I do like playoff hockey, although I haven't watched much this year, and I have to admit, it was on at our house the other night. I went upstairs. I didn't watch it. Now, that's shameful because postseason hockey is as good a there is because the dramatics and everything. But, yeah, I think it's going to go 6.
I like that. I'm going to say it's going to go 7 one way or the other. It just feels like every time the Stanley Cup final ends up coming down to some last period, it's going to be tied up and it's going to be just slug it out. I don't care how evenly matched the teams are, it just always seems to come out so close, and that's what makes these playoffs so exciting. Is it is just margins of error one way or the other, and it changes an entire series.
I think we would all agree in this room, in a way, not the cool house.
Agreed.
It's not even
Definitely.
close. It's not
Agreed.
even close.
Not just saying that because she's sitting right here.
The other night, Mary Margaret has the game on. You know what? I'm going, what? You know what? I said, what? Tell me. She said, very first hockey on to a lot of games. First hockey was in 1996. St. Louis, 94, excuse me. 4. Listen, right?
I even had that.
Arena to the Bruins.
That's
now, how
so
cool is
cool.
that?
Cool, yeah.
How cool is that?
That's awesome.
That's your hockey fandom coming full circle right there.
Right there.
Yeah. Break. When we're backside, we're going to talk about Bill Buckner, who passed at 69 this past weekend. Give you our thoughts on the upcoming NBA Finals. Well, NCAA Men's Golf. That's coming up next on VIBELAND Sports, a weekly presentation of VIBELAND Media.
Hi, we are VIBELAND. We are a creative network fostering and cultivating growth amongst a community of artists and innovators.
Here at HQ, we inspire young entrepreneurs to pursue their ideas and fulfill their highest ambitions. From producing albums to shooting multimedia content to our involvement with various charitable organizations within our local community, we seek to empower and spread knowledge through open source innovation.
We here at VIBELAND look forward to the future and hope you will join us on this exciting journey. Create, innovate, educate. VIBELAND.
Guys, let's move on to 3 other topics, beginning with the recently concluded NCAA Men's Golf Championship. That was over in Arkansas. Oklahoma State won stroke play by 31 strokes.
Is that good, you guys?
It's pretty good.
Is that good to be first and beat the second place team by 31 shots?
It's not too shabby.
Here's the problem with that.
They're the national champions, right, Todd?
It doesn't get them anything.
Oh.
What that does is it gets them the number 1 seed for the match play. What happens, the top 16 teams out of regionals across the country qualify for the national championship. They play 4 days of 18 holes, or 72 over a 4-day span, with the top 8 then going into match play. Oklahoma State obviously won stroke play convincingly. They were the number 1 seed. They played the 8th seed, SMU, and beat the Mustangs, I think, 3-2. Oklahoma was the number 4 team out of stroke play. They got number 5, Texas. Texas won late 3-2, rallied to beat the Sooners. Now, here's where people don't like it if you're an Oklahoma State fan. And I understand, and there are some Cowboy fans that have been objective about this. Nobody said anything about it when Oklahoma State won. Everybody by 31 strokes, and we don't win in match play, so we don't get anything. Well, let me say this. First of all, match play was designed for one reason, and well, 2 reasons. One was to further grow the game. Now that the Golf Channel has picked up match play, and you're not a golf guy, KP, but Casady and I are, there's really nothing better to watch than match play.
Oh, man.
Individual, however you want to view it. And since the Golf Channel has picked up this match play, college really taken off. And the other reason they did it was for exposure, and they're getting the exposure. With the coach at Oklahoma State, he, since everybody knows is now the athletic director, was a huge proponent. In fact, I think this was one of his ideas, is to not just crown a national championship because of stroke play. Let's set the field after 4 days and then play match play. Oklahoma State obliterates the field. In my opinion, it's the best golf team Oklahoma State has ever had. Something. Very, very good. To win stroke play by 31 shots. Round matchup, they get Texas, and here's where everybody's upset. Texas was 44 shots behind the Cowboys in stroke play. But the Longhorns beat Oklahoma State in the semifinals 3-2 in match play. And after all the historic marks that the Cowboy golf team set, they're done.
Including having the best golfer in the tournament, or in college golf right now.
Matthew Wolff and Victor Hovland were outstanding. State's best golf team. But Casady, your thoughts on match play? And why people are, when it bites you in the rear end, not happy about it. But our team, Oklahoma, 2 years ago, championship format, won it last year. Hey, 5 matches, somebody's off, you have a chance to go home.
That's right. I love match play. I think there should be more of it. However, we can get it on TV, get people to play it when they're out with their buddies, anything. It is an extremely fun way to play golf where the only thing that matters is that hole. And so you see guys, it changes the way you play.
Exactly. You're more likely to go for it
than
just lay it up. You're going to go for the pin instead of keeping it short to play conservative.
And it's one of the very, very few times in golf, really the only time. Every other time when you're playing golf, it's you versus the course. It's everyone versus the course. Whoever does the best against the course wins. In this, you're actually going one-on-one against your competitor. If I see you dump it in the water trying to go for it, Kelby, I might lay up just so that I can get, even if it gets me a bogey, but if I know that you're going to be taking penalty strokes and maybe having a double.
Not a hole,
right.
Not the score.
When you're finished, yeah, and it doesn't matter if you win by 1 stroke or 10. I love everything about it. It's just you win the hole, you move on, you start back at square one. Just give me more of that, please, and please.
It makes it interesting too, because in golf where these guys just they have a bad hole and they just shut down and destroy themselves the rest of the day. You can just, like you said, you forget about it and move on to the next. So that works in advantageous and disadvantageous way, I would say, because you can you can't ride that high streak all day, but you can also get over that low streak real quick. So I'm with you. I think it makes it more exciting as an OSU fan. Sucks to win by that large of a margin, to be that dominant. But then when it counts, that's why it makes it interesting.
That's why the Ryder Cup, I think, is such a big event, is it's just a lot of games like match play, some variants of them, but it's team formats where one team is going against another. So each individual matchup means that much more because you're just trying to win a point for your team. The competition that creates on the course is really second to none in any golfing event, whether it be at the College National Championship, at the Ryder Cup. Sometimes they'll have match play championships, 1 or 2 of them throughout the year. I always make sure I watch a ton of those matches. I'm a big fan of the format, and it helps grow the game. And it was extremely entertaining. I feel terrible for Oklahoma State that they had the number 1 team and weren't able to do it. Well, and Todd, I see you shaking your head a little bit, but the fact is,
keep from sobbing.
Well, it's that school down in Austin won, and that's even worse. So for me, that's just worst case scenario. Anytime that they do anything well. But regardless, they had an incredible team. I thought that Todd, you might be right. It might be the best team they've ever had, and that is a high bar to clear at Oklahoma State University. But my goodness, it's so much fun.
I've heard people say they definitely best team in college won that thing. I mean, they just
That was a
dismantled the field.
conversation, for
Yeah,
sure.
they were very, very good.
At that level, to beat somebody to beat another team by 30 strokes, I mean, that's crazy. To beat the field by that.
And I think you've seen it. PGA golfers have said there are some names on this team that we're going to see on top of the leaderboards in the future of the PGA. I mean, Justin Thomas and some other big name guys were out congratulating these golfers for finishing the way they did. So just remember these names, because you'll be seeing them for years to come on the top of big time leaderboards at big time events.
A lot of the match play in the college tournament this past week, and I loved it. I think it's great. I think you can say it's unfair. Hey, all 16 teams in the field have a chance to get there. You have to play well for 4 days,
That's right.
And then anything can happen in match play. Everybody's got the same chance.
Yeah, and it makes it that much more exciting because you don't know what's going to happen, and one guy can have an off day, and your whole team goes home.
If you haven't already done so, we invite you to subscribe to our podcast, Apple Podcast or Spotify. Also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at VIBELAND Sports, on Facebook, VIBELAND Sports as well. And again, it's Apple Podcast and Spotify, and you never have to miss another episode of VIBELAND Sports. Moving on, NBA Finals about to start, and a surprise entrant, the Toronto Raptors and the Golden State Warriors. First of all, let's talk about Toronto, because everybody knew Golden State was going to be there. They're well rested. They're going to have 9 days off from finishing off Houston until Game 1. But goodness gracious, how about the Toronto Raptors, who down the best team of the Eastern Conference? I was wrong. When those two played in that series, there's no doubt about it, Toronto was the better team.
I think that answers our fan poll question of last week, too, and who was more important to their team. I think, obviously, it was Kawhi.
But guess what? The results of that, KP, % of our listeners said Kawhi.
And see, I think you could maybe argue it the other way, because Kawhi came up big and his team won. But, I mean, Giannis really, he did not come up big. He played
exposed.
bad. And, I mean, maybe you say, okay, he was so important, his team went and lost 4 games in a row when he didn't play well. But I don't know where I'm going with this argument, but what I'm saying is that Kawhi's dominance led to them having the success that they had. And if they want to continue that, and then this next round, I think I said it to you earlier, Casady, I think Kawhi's got to average 40 if the Raptors want to have a chance at playing with the Warriors and competing for this title.
I agree. The way that Kawhi took it to just the stratosphere level, I didn't know that he had that switch that went where he went. I've seen him go in like insano mode before, but to do it for an entire series the way that he has, and really the whole playoffs, Kawhi Leonard is one of the best players in basketball, and he's wanting to show everybody that he still has got it.
And you kind of forget about that because, one, playing in a small market in San Antonio, playing alongside guys like Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, he was the big-time guy there, but he's kind of, the fourth name that mentioned with the Spurs during that time period. Well, then last year he plays, 4 games or whatever it was? He basically sits out an entire season. This year he's on a new team, and he's not a guy that says, look at me, just watch his celebrations. He makes the basket, just walks down the court. That's kind of what I like about him. He's not a me guy. He's not a show me guy. He's just, I'm going to go play basketball. I'm going to go hoop, and I'm going to go dominate. And he's reminding people of his name and why he's an NBA Finals MVP and an NBA champion. He's reminding people very quickly of why he is who he is.
I think you said it one here this year on a podcast. You like the Toronto Raptors more than you like the Milwaukee Bucks, but lately you kind of got away from that original thought.
I did. And it was mainly because Giannis convinced me otherwise. What he was able to do all season, leading the Bucks to the best record, and dominating the East and dominating the playoffs the way that they had up to this point. I really thought that we were going to see Giannis versus the Warriors, and that thing was going to be a really long series, 6 or 7 games, and they were all going to be really close. Now, I do think that the Raptors are a lot better than the Bucks. They showed that. They came in and punched the Bucks right in the mouth, and they kind of just rolled over and let the Raptors storm on through. They're a hot team. They don't have a ton of rest coming off of that win, which I think for them is a good thing. They can kind of stay in more of a rhythm.
Is a little too much of a layoff, too.
That's a long time. And then for the Warriors, now we know they have switches that they can flip whenever they want to, and that's kind of the whole thing. I don't care if you give them 9 days or 90 off, they're going to come back and they're still going to be the Warriors. But even without Kevin Durant, I cannot see this game or this series going past 6 for the Warriors now. It just feels like matchup-wise, the Warriors got another break on their way to a championship.
Speaking of KD, KP, is it a big deal if he doesn't play for Golden State, or will he even play? He did fly to Toronto with the team on the charter for the first 2 games of that series. So
again, I'm loving this narrative that's being created because I think it's a win-win no matter what for me as a fan. The narrative is, the Warriors they go and win without him. Let's say they win without him. And then he comes back. This is what I want to happen. I want them to win without him. Then I want him to come back because he's KD. He's not going to let his team go win, him sit on the sideline while they go get a ring. He's going to be out there, whether he's at 2% or 100%. I think he's going to be out there. And I want him to be out there, and I want him to struggle. And I want the Warriors to struggle because then the narrative is, well, do we need Kevin Durant? He can walk in free agency. We're better off without him. I want them to believe that and fully buy into that. So that's what I want to see. I want to see what this 9 days off does to the Warriors, because I think the Warriors are in a unique opportunity here. This is going to be their first series in a long time where they don't have home court advantage. So they'll go on the first 2 games in Toronto. These are must-win games for them. I know you can't say that this early in the series, but they are.
They are.
Because if Golden State sneaks out 1 win after that 9 days rest, they're going back to Oakland and it's over. I mean, they got to go back to Toronto regardless. But if Golden State can win 1 game in Toronto, I believe the series is over. And like you said, Todd, I kind of expect that 9 days. I bet you that first game they get blown out. I think Toronto comes out really strong, wins game 1, but I think Golden State sneaks away with game 2, lets the momentum come back because, like I said, if you're Toronto, you cannot leave Toronto with a 1-1 split or down 2-0. It's over. You have to leave up 2-0 with the Warriors back on their heels and making them think a little bit, hey, do we have this? Are we really as good as we are? But you have to put them on their heels because I think if you don't, you're in for a quick. I was going to say long series. You're in for a long time and a quick series.
If you are an NBA fan, you obviously want this thing to go on as long as it can. I'm with Casady. I don't think any more than 6. My money would be on 5. The matchup is favorable for Toronto at all. I think Golden State is a terrible matchup for them, and I think they're going to exploit them in many, many ways, and I don't really look for this to be much of a series.
And look at this roster. This is just how good Golden State is. Let's talk about Toronto's roster for a second. Kyle Lowry, great point guard in the league. Top 10 point guard in the league. I wasn't going to say top 5. Excellent three-point shooter. Danny Green, killer three-point shooter, great defender, excellent playoff performer. Kawhi Leonard, probably the best player in the playoffs other than Steph Curry right now, playing the best basketball out of anyone out there. And at your 4, you got Pascal Siakam, an excellent up-and-coming player, excellent athleticism. I like the him and Draymond matchup. I'm curious to see what Draymond's going to be able to do to him on defense. I don't think it's going to be much. And then at the 5, you've got the crafty Marc Gasol. Then you've got Serge coming off the bench. Look at those names, those 6 names. Those are big-time names. Those are guys you want on your roster in the NBA Finals. And I think Toronto putting all those guys on the court together says, hey, Golden State, you guys have got some names on your end too. Let's see if these matchups can roll out and, compete. And I just don't think Toronto as a team putting all those pieces together can compete with the shooting and the flow and the cohesiveness that the Warriors have. It's a buzzsaw. You don't want to run into them. But on paper, I think that's a good shot. That's probably the best piece of paper team that you can put against the Warriors on paper, but as an actual team, I think the Bucks had a better chance.
Here's what I think, Casady. The Raptors ultimately beat the Bucks over experience. They're a much more experienced playoff team. And I think things advantage Golden State has over this Raptors club.
Yes. The Warriors are so playoff tested, it's crazy. I mean, look how many games they've played. It's crazy how seasoned everybody on that team is.
You've got a guy on the Warriors roster averaging 5 minutes a game that's got more playoff experience than 95% of Toronto's roster. I'm trying to think on just off the top of my head right now. I mean, well, it's Toronto's first finals ever as a franchise. Kawhi is the only one I can
Marc
think.
Gasol.
And Danny Green.
Yeah.
Serge
Has got finals experience. Danny Green
doesn't have finals experience,
but he's got playoff.
But he's got a lot of playoff experience.
Yeah, and he's played in some big-time series playing with Memphis against the Thunder. So, yeah, there's experience, but there's no final. Kawhi's the only finals experience, and Danny Green.
My question is, if you are the Raptors, would you rather see Kevin Durant out there on the court in the way that they play with KD? Because honestly, with him being a bit of a ball stopper and playing a little more of that ISO, if you're able to slow him down, I think it might be a little bit easier, as crazy as that sounds, with Kevin Durant, even at full strength. But look, he's also the best player in the world, and you don't want to even let him have a chance. He's got 2 Finals MVPs for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, he shows up in big games.
Part of me agrees with you to throw off the chemistry and throw a wrench in things, but you're not going to win an NBA Finals series on throwing a wrench. You've got to win 4 games, so the better team's going to come out and win this. And the other reason I tend to disagree with that maybe is because you're not going to get, if KD's out there, you're not getting peak Kawhi. Kawhi's going to spend however many 48 minutes guarding Kevin Durant, so you're going to get a great Kawhi Leonard, but you're not going to get what we've seen, because he's going to have a much larger defensive responsibility than he's had this playoffs.
The Warriors play better without Kevin Durant. They are not a better team without Kevin Durant. So if you're the Raptors, you hope that KD sets on the bench.
Danged if you do and danged if you don't.
You're right. All right, one other topic I want to discuss, and this past weekend we lost a couple of sporting greats. One was Bart Starr, the Hall of Fame and 5-time Super Bowl champion quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. Bart Starr, a terrific player, and probably even a better man. But Bill Buckner also died at the age of 69. He had been battling recent years dementia. And Bill Buckner, when I say that name, I think people, and I'm probably as guilty of it as anybody, but I also understand who Bill Buckner is and what type of player he was. When you say Bill Buckner, and a lot of the national media led with his play in the infamous 1986 Game 6 World Series contest with the New York Mets, when the ball went between the wickets and went out into right field, that enabled the New York Mets to rally, force Game 7. Everybody said that Bill Buckner cost the Red Sox a World Series. No, he didn't. Boston came back. They had another shot in Game 7 and actually had a lead in Game 7. But we remember Bill Buckner not for his greatness, but instead because of one single player. And here's how I sum it up. He was a hitting machine that's being remembered by one fielded error. Bill Buckner struck out as rare as anybody that's ever played the game. Do you guys know that in his seasons, and he played 22 seasons, he never struck out more than 39 times in a season?
Wow.
And he never struck out more than twice in any game over those 22 years.
That's incredible.
I mean, that's an MLB superstar is doing that every day nowadays.
Bill Buckner, in my opinion, is much better than some of the players that are in the Baseball Hall of Fame right now. If Bill Buckner had ever been healthy, he had bad ankles, terrible ankles, and then later in his career had knee problems. He finished with over 2,700 career hits. He would have for sure reached 3,000, which would have meant he would have been a shoo-in for Cooperstown. What people don't understand about Buckner is he could hit, he was a great base runner, and he had super speed. He was one time an All-Star. He also won a National League batting title, yet everybody wants to talk about that one play. And do you guys realize that over a 2-decade span in the 1970s and 1980s, that there was only one player in baseball over those 20 years that had more hits than Bill Buckner? His name is Pete Rose.
Jeez.
So I knew what Bill Buckner was as a player. Yeah, I still do think of him with that one play, but sadly there's a generation, Casady, and you're a Red Sox fan, so you've known more about Buckner than I thought.
Yes.
Just don't know anything about him but that play. And I think it's very unfortunate that this guy's career has been judged by that. And he was so mistreated in Boston after that World Series that he did not return again until well after 2000. His son was bullied at school because of that. So Bill Buckner leaves New England and goes and lives in Idaho, almost in seclusion. And he told everybody in the media at the time, he said, that's the right move for me and my family. They forget how good he was, and he wasn't always with the Red Sox. He played with the Royals. He played with the Angels. He's probably as famous with the Cubs and Dodgers and Red Sox as any of those 5 teams. The dude is very close to being a Hall of Famer, and it's unfortunate we lost a good one over the Memorial Day weekend, Bill Buckner at 69.
Yeah, he was an incredible player, and I think we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but I felt like he just got stigmatized off of that one play that he made. Yes, it was a big-time mistake, but come on. I mean, everything else that he did for the game of baseball, for every team that he played for, I mean, you can't ask for more from a guy. He never had 3 strikeouts in a game. That's a stat I didn't even know about him, which is maybe the most mind-blowing thing that I've ever even heard. And for him to, when they're eulogizing him on SportsCenter, to
all about one play.
Right, to run that play the whole time in the background, I just honestly I was getting a little bit upset. I was wanting them to focus on what he actually did as a baseball player and not the one error that he made in his storied 20-plus seasons playing this game. I mean, it's crazy. I'm so glad that the Red Sox did what they did, bringing him back in 2007. They had a really nice ceremony for him, and it was kind of like
throughout the first pitch to Dwight Evans.
Yes, it just wiping that slate clean. It felt like finally, after 20-something years, he can not have to worry about that following him everywhere. Everyone kind of just. It was a refreshing moment.
And to my knowledge, well, they call him Bucky. He looked like kind of a gruff guy. I don't think he was a gruff guy. And to his credit, for all the pain that was inflicted on him by the Boston Red Sox fan base, I don't think he really ever held a grudge. I just don't think he wanted to go back. He left that part of his life, and you're right, kudos to the Red Sox for reaching out and making it happen. And here's how humble he is. People would call him after they won that first World Series to break the curse and say, congratulations. And his response would be, thank you, but why are you calling me? I lost my chance. That's those guys that won their World Series. Now, that's a pretty humble superstar, if you ask me. And a lot of people don't think of Bill Buckner as a superstar, but the guy was really a good baseball player. I had a chance in the 80s to watch him a lot in person, and he was a phenomenal player. One other thing about him, he also played in the outfield some. He played in left, he played in right. He was the left fielder in 1975 when Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's record.
Wow.
How about that?
I didn't even know that either.
Yeah. And, we talk about the lack of strikeouts. That's why today's game bothers me. I grew up watching Major League Baseball in the 70s and 80s when it was taboo to strike out. You didn't do it. If you struck out 200 or 250 times back in the 70s or 80s, they were getting rid of your butt. Now, if you could hit 30-plus home runs and strike out 200-plus times,
you're an MVP
you're getting
candidate.
a huge you're getting a huge contract, and you're glorified as a superstar. So that's the difference, the way the game has gone from when Bill Buckner played to today's game. I mentioned he struck out 39 times or fewer every season he played. As we sit here today, there's already 22 players in Major League Baseball that have struck out more times this year, and we're only a couple months into the season, than Bill Buckner ever did for one season in his career.
I believe it. And
Jeez.
Hand up over here as a big fan of the Cubs. The name I think of when you're talking about guys like that, Javi Baez. He'll hit a 450-foot home run and then strike out 3 times in the same game. So it's part of what – and he was the runner-up to the MVP last year to Christian Yelich. And Javi's a big-time strikeout guy. There is not a pitch that Javi sees that he doesn't like. The walks are very low if you check his stats. The strikeouts are very high. But that's kind of – like you said, Todd, that's kind of where baseball's going. And it's not looked down upon anymore, and we lost a legend over the weekend that kind of personified that image that's kind of going away in baseball.
We lost 2 legends, R.I.P. to Bart Starr and R.I.P. to Bill Buckner.
Absolutely.
The 3 of us will be back. We'll wrap up episode 23 of VIBELAND Sports right after this. Back for a final segment, and earlier we were talking about last week's VIBELAND fan poll question of the week. It was which player is more important to their team. Looks kind of smallish now that we know the results, especially with the way the results went. Giannis, 71% of our listeners said Giannis is more important to the Bucks than Kawhi Leonard is to the Raptors. 29% of you voted for Leonard as more important to his particular team. This week, our new VIBELAND fan poll question of the week, and I like this one. Greatest NBA dynasty. Is it the current Warriors? Is it the 90s Bulls? Is it Bill Russell's Celtics? Or is it the Showtime Lakers of the 80s? Now, everybody probably remembers three of those four eras. The era that is Bill Russell's was from 1956 to 1969. That spanned 13 years. And the Boston Celtics won 11 world titles in his 13 years.
11 out of 13.
That's not bad.
So which would you say, again, our fan poll question of the week is the greatest NBA dynasty? Is it A, the current Warriors, B, Michael Jordan's 90s Bulls, C, Bill Russell's Boston Celtics, or D, the Showtime Lakers? At VIBELAND Sports on Twitter to find the poll question. We'd like to see what you think about this week's question.
A caveat to remember about those Bulls as well. I think that record looks a lot better if MJ doesn't decide to play baseball for a couple of years.
Yes.
So
I mean, they legitimately, we talked about it last week. I think they could have had 8 in a row.
8 in a row. He was 6 for 6 in his finals appearances. So you'd think those 2 years that he's playing baseball, that might have been 8 for 8.
I would say if he would have stayed, that would be the number one forever for me. But man, it's hard to go against 11 and 13 years. That's an impressive record in any sport. I don't care what you're playing or what era you're playing. That's dominance at a different kind of level.
I hope there isn't a recency bias in this poll. Don't just vote for the Warriors because they're happening right now. Remember, that's 11 out of 13.
They blew a 3-1 lead.
Then they blew a 3-1 lead. After winning 73 games that season.
Log on to our Twitter page at VIBELAND Sports. You can also follow us on Instagram at VIBELAND Sports and cast your ballot for the greatest NBA dynasty going all the way back to the 50s up until now's current Warriors. Also, if you've not followed us on Facebook, you can do so and subscribe to our podcast weekly. Drop it on Wednesdays, this week a little bit later because of the Memorial Day holiday, either at Apple Podcast or Spotify. Guys, it has been a pleasure.
As always.
Loved it. It's great to talk to you guys always.
All right, we'll be back and do it again next week. For KP, for Casady, I'm Todd Miller. This has been episode 23 of VIBELAND Sports, a weekly production of VIBELAND Media.